Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple. Recommend Apple Podcasts or Spotify. On Android, we're asking you to try us on Spotify. We know a lot of you get us on the Five Reasons YouTube channel. We appreciate our subscribers there as well. But we put out the content first on the podcast feed. So if you want us right away, stream us off Spotify as well. And then if you want to watch us later because you think we're so good looking, you can do that later. Also, check out, none of you think that. And also check out Off the Floor. Link is right there in the description. You'll bypass the Apple upcharge. You know the deal, the place for the most heat anywhere, most heat information, conversation. I'm telling you, by the time we get to October, if you're not signed up here, you're going to be like the only ones. That's what I'm doing. I'm just pushing this so hard that you're all going to end up there because it's where you should be. It's where you can get the most organized and passionate Miami Heat content that actually has like some backing to it instead of dealing with like, the bots on Twitter and all that kind of stuff. So check it out. It's Off the Floor. Also, Real Estate Shop, realestateshopfl.com. Our friends Javier and Amanda, they are all over South Florida doing open houses. It's a complicated time to buy right now. Some more inventory out there than usual in South Florida. And also, you've got the interest rates that we know are a little bit up from where they've been. So they can help you navigate all of this. Really good people, family people. They'll help your family find the home or sell their home. Realestateshopfl.com or the Fort Lauderdale Realtor. Now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne, yay, five on the floor, ride for my dogs, where here's the thing, you can check the score, hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds, down to Biscayne. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's about have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, I know Mercy listens to every episode. It's time to work Norm Powell in there somewhere. Or make slight adjustments here as we head towards training camp. So he keeps saying he's getting in the studio to do it. We're asking him to do it. All right, we are going to do the more depressing half of this episode series. And I know we had a few in between. I've been bringing more people on the podcast lately. But I've got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick in the Five Reasons Sports. We're going to look at worst case scenarios for this Miami Heat team. Now, again, we've already done best case. And I want to be clear on something because listening comprehension often not so great. On Off the Floor, people are saying that I'm saying that the Heat are going to win 47 games. I didn't do that.
No.
I said that was the high end for this team. The high end.
It's the best case scenario.
Best case scenario. If things break right, okay, 47 wins. That's where I'm at with it. I think it's possible, but a whole lot of internal development needs to go on. Powell and Hero need to really click. Bam needs to come out of the gate hot this time instead of sort of working up to it during the season. And they're going to need a couple of these rotation players, whether it's Larson, Jovic, somebody to really take a step. Or maybe it's Ware, who knows? But they're going to need a combination of these things to happen. These are best case scenarios. We're going to do worst case scenario here. And I'm going to flip it a little bit. What is the worst case scenario for record is not necessarily the worst case scenario for their direction going forward. Like I could come up here and say, and we're not doing this with injuries, because obviously, look, if Bam and Tyler get hurt, like, yes, you cut 20 wins off the total, right? But it's not that. I think the worst case scenario is for just enough to go right, but just enough to go wrong, and they're the 10 seed with 36 wins. That to me is the worst case scenario. Am I wrong about that? Or do you think they could win fewer than that? Like if there's not serious injuries, they could be under where they were last year, which is that 36 to 38 win space.
This is that's a tough question. Oh, there's my Alex impression for the night.
That's right.
And I bet there's a few people out there that thought Ethan and I wouldn't come back and do this episode of the worst case scenario. So also
Right,
want to
because we're
shout out
water
all of you
carriers.
doubters. We're here.
That's right. We're here.
I don't know if that's the worst case scenario, but it feels like to the fan base probably that there's an element of this rut of being a play-in team that's how it would resonate. To your point, like, and for everybody who wanted them to have 2 picks in this last draft, and however that works out, and we'll see how good those and impactful those prospects are. The Heat now at least control their draft pick next year in the event something catastrophic were to take place. That's important, I think, moving
That's
forward.
why I don't think that losing a lot of games is necessarily the worst case scenario,
For
because
sure.
they do have their pick in what looks like, again, to be a good draft.
Yeah, and it may be before a really bad draft. I saw an article floating around that the 2027 class may be one of the worst.
And the Heat don't have a first-round pick in that draft currently, right? That's the one they gave up for Rozier.
Now, I know that's a long time away, but anyway, that's a different pod. So to your point, though, I think you're kind of right in that the worst case scenario would be like basically what they just did in the last year, like kind of show enough to make you think, gosh, there's something in there, but 36 wins. Like we've been with these 36, 37 win teams before. Like we've seen this show before. And even some of those Dwayne seasons in between the Shaq exit and the big 3, like those teams may have been higher end 40 win teams. I think most of them were. Maybe
one of them did win 47, did it not?
I thought so. Maybe the one that
one won
that
43 or 44. Yeah,
But yeah, so they're kind of in that range too, right? Like I kind of think that is the absolute best case scenario. Worst case is being where you've been in the last few years. And unfortunately, like, unless a lot of stuff breaks right, you're probably going to be floating around in that range. But we talked about it on the best case scenario pod. If they can just find a way, Ethan, I think this is going to be a huge win psychologically. If they can find a way to not be involved in the play-in tournament, that will be a big step, I feel like, for this new Jimmy Butler less era, whatever it becomes. I think that they got to get in out of the play-in, because that is kind of from the fans' perspective. And I know that they try to make the tournament compelling. It is kind of like, are we doing this again as a 10 seed?
Right. I mean, they're great in the play-in. I mean, historically, like Spoelstra's like undefeated in the play-in. But I guess, Greg, if you follow on that, it's about more than record. It's also about circumstance, but it's also about who contributes to the record. So to me, the worst case scenario would be you get 36, 37 wins and you're the 10 seed, but it's on the backs of players who've done it before. So let me put it this way. Okay. Let's say that you get another good season out of Bam. You get another borderline all-star season out of Tyler, but good enough that he's going to command a lot of money, but not good enough that it really takes you to another level, right? Wiggins, let's say, is still on the roster, playing really good some nights, not really good other nights. Then you're going into next year. I guess you'd be in the last year of his contract. Let's say you get regression from Davion, so now you're no longer sure about that contract, which looks very good at the time, which to me still looks good and looked good at the time, but you're getting, and then the combination of Ware, Jovic, Jaquez, Larson, your core young group, nobody pops.
Yeah, there's question marks.
Right. Okay. And that would be, to me, the worst case. Like,
or like Terry has a resurgence and like that ends up leading it. Like, like that would feel so 2017 Miami Heat for me, like for that. I don't want it to be the only veterans that should be leading this team are the guys that we expect to be leading the group.
Young veterans.
and Norm
Right.
Powell, who's the oldest guy on the team. I
Well,
mean, I think
okay,
that
okay, and let's. Oh, now Norm is going to the last year of his contract, and you're gonna have a decision to make there. I don't think there's really anything with Norm that could really go wrong because you didn't give up anything to get him. And like I said, I don't think he's taking significant reps from players who needed to be put into that spot. I was more concerned about Kyle Anderson taking some of Jovic's minutes than I am about Norm taking anybody's minutes. At least with Norm, worst case scenario on that, he plays at a high enough level that it gives you leverage with Tyler's contract. Like that's, I mean, there's
Mhm.
nothing I don't think that can really go. And even if he was to play his way out of what you can pay him, okay, you didn't give up anything. Oh, so it's
Mhm.
fine. You got a year, and you know, and he got
But
the fans are
but
going to get attached to him because of the kind of person he is. But like, it it's not the worst case scenario. But to me, the worst case is there's different ways to get to 36 to 38 wins. Like if you get to 36 to 38 wins, but you've got Jovic and or Hawkins and or Ware and or Larson, and these guys are making contributions, learning, getting better as the season progresses. Okay, if they're doing what Jaquez did last year, and you have to be carried to the finish line by Tyler scoring, taking a ridiculous number of shots and scoring, 32 points, down the stretch of games, then or even say Wiggins doing some of that stuff, that's not what you want this year. So again, it's not just a win total for me; it's how they get to that win total.
well, and to that point, they really have, if you look at the roster, removed other than the starters, who, if they're going to be any good, that group needs to figure itself out, right? With Wiggins and Norm Powell, if we assume that those two go
Yeah,
alongside Bam, Tyler, and Khalil Ware, let's just assume that for now.
probably,
Um,
probably.
but like most of the vets, like the Kyle Andersons that were in the way, or I guess maybe you could say Drew Smith could end up getting, if he's back healthy, could he get in the way of Yakachonis getting some minutes? Maybe. But I guess where I'm going here is, as I look over the roster, other than Terry Rozier, there's really not that many progress stoppers. So to your
Right.
point, if you don't see progress and it ends up in an uneven season where you have even more questions about like what you're really building here, that I think philosophically also it would kind of that's a tough point for an organization that's kind of hung their hat on developing guys and maximizing players. If Jaquez and Jovic, if those, we're kind of reaching this point, Ethan, where they got to
We
figure
need,
it out. Jovic in
we need to see it.
particular, because now you got to pay
Yeah.
him. But
Mhm.
so it's a pretty, it's an important season for a lot of the Heat's homegrown talent that they've drafted.
Well, we've been praising Adam Simon and his scouting crew, and I do think they've done well with the picks that they've had. But yes, at some point you got to have one of them like really, really, you know, make you watch them, as Spolstra says. Like that's where we're at. Okay, now where it's in his second season, he's young. We obviously had the little hiccup at
And
summer
Bam
league,
and
like
Tyler, they did
for now.
draft Bam and Tyler too.
No, they did, but I'm going almost back to it, because they're Bam and Tyler are pre-Jimmy, right? Like Bam
Yeah,
was
no,
drafted
I'm
in
with you.
17, Tyler was drafted, a couple months before they acquired Jimmy. So that's or a month. So that's a little bit different. But I'm talking about since
Yeah.
this build started, which is really when Jimmy came in. We praised the Jovic pick because it was sort of forward thinking, out of the box for them, skilled player. We praised the Jaquez pick for a different reason, ready to play right away, burst on the scene, right? Seemed like he had the chops to be a scorer and maybe a little bit more. We praised the Ware pick because, again, they needed size, they needed a skilled big. Okay. Larson looks like a good second round selection. They don't have a lot in terms of the undrafted pipeline right now that I've liked as much as I've liked in the past. Keyshawn Johnson had that good last game out there that I watched before I left Vegas, but I'm still curious what the role is there, even though I think there's an athletic profile that you can lean into. And then, Highsmith, is still on the roster and is still going to contribute for them, but I don't know that he's long for their program at this point. They don't have as many guys kind of in waiting. I didn't like a lot of the undrafteds that I saw out there with them. They're going to have to find some others. And then some of the ones they invested some time in last year, Isaiah Stevens, Josh Christopher, no longer with the organization anymore, right? And so they don't have as many guys kind of there, but they have more, you would think higher upside guys because they were first and second round picks.
Mhm.
And yes, you want to see the development, the role, guys taking roles. Okay. Not, because it's funny because I asked Spo, and on the other side, we'll get to more of this, but I asked Spo, out in Vegas about Jovic and finding a role for him. And he said that'll happen. It was starting to happen. And part of my thinking now is that I'm overdoing this idea of them having to find a role for guys. No, you want to be a factor in this league. Go
Carve it
carve
out.
out your role. Carve it
Yeah.
out. Carve it out. Make him watch you. Make him play you. Okay, that's where they're at with this. And I think the way Ware took that to heart in the last couple of games,
Encouraging.
because he could have gone the other way.
Totally.
It's a positive development. We'll see if it lasts until camp. All right. On the other side, excuse me, I have an external factor that could be a worst case scenario here. We're not trying to be too negative, but we had to do this. We did 40 minutes on the positive side. We do want to mention another great sponsor. I don't want to be negative here. Play Prize Picks. Use the code 5FIVE. Put down your $5. Get your 50 to play right away. Prize Picks, the official fantasy sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Daily Fantasy Simplified. They've got all kinds of sports on there, all kinds of plays, all kinds of discounts. Taco Tuesday, Flex Friday. It's all there, and it is legal in the state of Florida. So use the code 5FIVE. I guarantee you will find better possibilities here. I'll just leave it there than that app that everybody's using. Use the code 5FIVE. Go to prizepicks.com. Here's an external factor. We know the balance of the power has shifted significantly west again. It's been out there for a quarter century. This may be as lopsided as the conferences have ever been, honestly. I think you could be looking at as many as 48 to 50 win teams, 48, 50 win and above teams in the Western Conference. If you just look on paper, okay?
Not in the East.
Not in the East. I mean, there are teams in the West, like if the Spurs were in the East, they'd be a top 4 seed right now. Okay. In the West, I don't even know if they are going to get out of the play-in. Okay. That's where we are. Here would be my concern. There are some teams in recent years that have been stockpiling young talent. 2 of them in particular, Detroit and Orlando, look like they're ready to take that leap. Okay. They haven't had that much playoff success. Orlando has added Bane. Detroit has a legitimate superstar in waiting now. Like Cade Cunningham is that guy. It's pretty clear. Okay. And now he's gotten some playoff experience. And they've got a couple of their young players who were hurt last year coming back. They've added Duncan, which I think is going to help some of the young players in space. But mostly it's about the young talent that's being assembled on some of these teams. And this young talent was drafted higher than the Heat's young talent. And, I keep talking about leaning young, but other teams can lean young into guys that supposedly, at least the way they were drafted, have higher upsides. And if they're starting to figure things out here, then it's going to make it harder for the Heat to chase some of these teams down, because we know it's also harder to get the star, the experienced star, to sort of fill out your roster or be your leading man. Are you worried about that with any of the teams in the East, that the Heat are going to kind of be, they have some nice rotational young talent, it looks like, but they don't have a Cade. They don't have a Paolo. They don't have that kind of high level star who's honestly, in those cases, some of them have signed extensions, but are not getting paid what the biggest stars in the league are getting paid.
Yeah. And they're particularly offensively gifted players. And I think like that's the headlining offensive players, what I think Heat fans are looking for, and to some degree a closer, right? Like those are the things. I guess for a year, I probably am concerned that they probably could get not only passed by Detroit and Orlando, who were ahead of them last year anyway, but like Atlanta really improved. I mean, we're going to probably have to do a post-mortem on the offseason and kind of figure out where all the teams stand and look at their moves, because I don't think that I've done that holistically and looked at the conference. But just thinking about Atlanta, I think they're going to be good with everybody who comes back healthy, Jalen Johnson, stuff like that. Indiana, as much as you think, okay, they're going to probably be really bad, sometimes they're one of those teams that doesn't really tank, so they could be in the mix. And so if you're in this 36, 34 win territory, you run the risk of getting passed by a lot of these teams. But I think the Heat will point to upcoming flexibility as an opportunity to revamp the entire thing to some degree. And that'll be the selling point. And so it's just really kind of a short-term concern. I think the other thing, Ethan, that would make fans raise an eyebrow would be if the Heat are clearly not a contender and they're careening toward a 35 win season. Is there anyone on the team that can be traded for an asset so that you have enough picks when the next superstar asks
Well,
out?
I just did. I'll tease this a little bit. I just did this pod with Hot Take Harry. Many of you are familiar with Twitter. I think we're gonna actually run it after this one runs because we didn't want to separate the best
I'm
and
not
worst case
going as far as
scenarios
him
by
on
too many
this.
pods. No, but the point he and I spoke about at the end was like, I mean, the Wiggins thing, like that is like you don't want to come out of this season 36 wins, 10th seed, play in, and then still holding on to Wiggins. I know he'll be going to the last year of his contract, but if that's the case, it may be better to try to move him sooner and accumulate the assets sooner to give you more ammunition sooner than to come out of the season and then, okay, how are we going to trade him? I do think this, though. It's funny how the Norm Powell trade, which was, I mean, nobody, even the harshest critics of the Heat, okay, in the Twitter sphere or everywhere else, nobody can have a problem with that trade. Like there is
No.
just no argument against it. You traded, one guy who was great in the locker room and on Instagram, and another guy, who in slow mo, who I think we liked his game. They liked his game, but we know that he was going to end up taking minutes from Jovic, which none of us wanted to see this season. And you gave up these two guys who really shouldn't have been in the rotation this year. In Love's case, we're not going to be in the rotation this year. In Anderson's case, probably not going to be in the rotation. And you got a guy who's literally a 22-point scorer on high efficiency. Like, I just don't know how anybody could. On the last year of his contract, where you have flexibility to decide what to do, you can't have any problem with it. And
I
do
told you
think
Pat was going to deliver his Mona Lisa. That's it.
well,
That's Norm Powell trade. No, I'm joking.
it ain't a Mona Lisa, but it ain't bad. Okay, it's not a Salvador Dali either, but it's maybe it's a burrito. Okay, it's not it's pretty good. Okay, and it does the one thing, and I know it was supposed to be more negative on this podcast, so I apologize for hope trafficking here. It does make you think that they still got it in there somewhere. They do still have the ability to kind of target the situation where a player is going to come free and capitalize. And we haven't seen them do that really since Jimmy. And that's why it was encouraging to me. They did it with Dragic. Obviously, Pat had done it with many others before, Zoe, Shaq, whatever. But like this was a trade where, okay, you kind of saw what the Clippers were doing. You had to understand the Clippers' mindset here to make this trade, which was that the Clippers obviously saw an opportunity with Beal potentially coming free at a cheaper price for them.
Yeah.
They had some inside knowledge there because of a relationship. It's clear Harden had a lot to do with Beal coming. So it's clear that there was a relationship that was there before, and that the Clippers were essentially going to, in their view, they didn't give up that much at that position by losing Powell, and they picked up by getting Beal, and they ended up picking up John Collins when they needed front court help. That's the ability to see the whole league and jump in when something happens that I think we've wanted to see the Heat execute more.
Yep.
And that is, I know I'm supposed to be negative here, but that is something I've been taking away. Like, okay, it's not just that they pulled it off, it's that they saw it coming, obviously. And that, to me, that's promising.
So I guess if we're going to keep this as like worst case scenarios, it's more of the same from the standings perspective, but also if we didn't see degrees of forward thinking as we're getting throughout the season, because like Ethan, you and I, we do these shows daily, and we knew going, like, I don't know what month it was. It had to probably be December. Jimmy was making the season a mess. That team was going nowhere. And it's like, if we know it, everybody has to know it, right? And so I think that that's kind of an element of this, is just understanding when to capitalize at the deadline, who you can move. And to your point, though, you got to have players in the pipeline, and your draft picks have to pay off. Like, these are things now in the NBA, if you don't get your draft picks right, you're not going to be good. And so beyond Bam and Tyler, they need these guys to pop. And so the worst case is that none of those guys pop, and that, we're looking at 35 wins.
Yeah, I mean, the worst case, like I said, 35-36 wins, and Tyler and Bam are carrying you to it. That's the worst case. Like, if it's 35 or 36 wins, but like one of the other guys, young guys, is contributing to that, and really, okay, wait, we have a potential star here. That's different. But you don't want that, and then you got to make a decision. Okay, are we going to pay these two? Well, one of them they've already committed to. But are we going to pay these two guys $100 million to lead us back to 36 wins the next year? That's what you don't want. That's what you don't want. And again, I think Powell gives them some protection on that, some leverage on that, and it does make me feel a little better about them getting out of this rut, because I mean that move saved their offseason. There's no other way around it. Like you can actually argue that, I mean, we'll do a total grade on the offseason, but it raised them 2 grades for me. Like,
Oh, for sure.
it really did. Like, I mean, you got a really good player and a good person who's going to fit in their program, and it's got some leverage with the hero contract, and you really gave up nothing. And again, it speaks to kind of, all right, seeing around the league what's going to happen, and can you pounce. But anyway, we discussed some worst case, we discussed some best case. Next episode, we're going to have I'm going to have Harry on to talk about all the things they could have, should have done, which I know is going to get me more text messages back than I've ever gotten before. All right, Greg, appreciate it. Thanks for our sponsors, realestateshopfl.com. Let them know we sent you, by the way. Prize Picks, use the code FIVE.
Thank you for listening to the Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.